disappearing locker. In 2013, Westbrook High School in Michigan was an ordinary suburban school until Locker 134 began to garner an eerie reputation. It all started when a sophomore named Jake Reynolds approached the locker after lunch. As he spun the combination lock, he swore something wasn't right. He turned the dial and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. He felt a slight resistance, as if something, or someone, was pulling from the other side. A shiver ran down his spine, but he brushed it off, figuring he was just being paranoid. After wrestling with the door for several minutes, Jake called over a friend. They tugged and yanked together, but the locker stayed sealed shut. Growing frustrated, they called the janitor, Mr. Keller, who had worked at the school for over 30 years. Mr. Keller simply gave it a tug, and to Jake's amazement, the door swung open effortlessly. He felt embarrassed, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something unnatural had happened. He glanced inside the locker and froze when he noticed faint scratches on the inside wall, almost as if someone had tried to claw their way out. Over the next week, more students began complaining about Locker 134. Some claimed to hear faint scratching noises or whispers, while others swore they felt the door vibrate under their hands. One morning, as Jake approached the locker, he found a small, battered notebook sitting inside. It was old, its pages yellowed with age, and the cover was marked with strange symbols that no one could decipher. Inside, the pages were filled with scribbles, strange diagrams, and one word repeated over and over again: help. The school administration dismissed the stories as student pranks, but things escalated when one of the teachers, Mrs. Danvers, found herself standing in front of Locker 134 late one afternoon. She had stayed late to grade papers and heard soft footsteps behind her, but when she turned around, no one was there. The air around her suddenly turned icy cold, and she felt an invisible force tug at her jacket sleeve. She left the hallway shaken, and the school decided to seal off the locker indefinitely. When students returned after summer break, something even stranger happened. Locker 134 was gone. In its place was a smooth stretch of wall, with no sign that a locker had ever existed there. Rumors spread through the halls like wildfire. Some believed the locker had been removed overnight, while others whispered that it had never truly been there at all. The unsettling mystery of the disappearing locker was never solved, but those who experienced it still shudder when they recall what happened. The ghost in the yearbook. In the spring of 2007, the senior class of Pine Valley High in Texas was finalizing their yearbook when something odd caught the editor's eye. As the team reviewed group photos from a recent event, one image stood out. A group of students posing on the football field, all smiling and laughing. But in the background, partially obscured by the crowd, stood a girl that no one could identify. She had pale skin, long dark hair, and wore an outdated white dress that looked nothing like the school's usual attire. Stranger still, no one remembered her being there. The yearbook team passed the photo around, asking teachers and students if they recognized her, but no one did. Some chalked it up to a glitch or photographic anomaly, but the more they stared at the image, the more unsettling it became. The girl's face was oddly expressionless, and her eyes seemed to follow anyone who looked at the photo for too long. Determined to solve the mystery, the yearbook staff dug through the school's old records. After weeks of searching, they uncovered a yearbook from 1993 that held the key to the mystery. A girl named Emily Hartwell had attended Pine Valley High, but tragically passed away in a car accident just days before her prom. Emily had been a beloved student, and her death had shaken the school. In that year's yearbook, she was supposed to appear in a group photo with her friends, but her sudden death meant she never made it to the photo session. That's when the eerie theory emerged. Could the girl in the background be Emily? As more students looked at the photo, some swore they could feel a chill in the air when they stared at her face. Others began to claim that they had seen her in other yearbook photos hidden in the background. As word spread, students from different graduating classes came forward, saying they had noticed a strange figure in their group photos as well, always in the same white dress with the same haunting expression. To this day, Emily's ghost is said to appear in yearbook photos, as if trying to take part in the school memories she missed out on. Pine Valley students no longer look at their yearbooks the same way, knowing that at any moment they might spot a pale figure in the background, watching. The music room. Haunting. For years, students at Oak Ridge Academy in Virginia avoided the old music room at the far end of the school. While it was still used for classes during the day, no one, student or teacher, dared stay there alone after school hours. The room had an unsettling reputation. Some claimed it was always colder than the rest of the building, while others reported hearing the faint tinkling of piano keys, even when the room was empty. The music teacher, Mrs. Calloway, didn't believe in ghosts or haunted rooms. She considered herself practical and level-headed until one fateful evening in late October. She had stayed late to practice a piano piece for an upcoming school concert. As the last students and staff left the building, she sat alone at the grand piano in the center of the room. She began to play, but after a few minutes, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She felt an icy draft sweep through the room, even though the windows were shut. As she continued to play, she caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of her eye, a shadow moving unnaturally across the wall. Mrs. Calloway stopped playing, her hands hovering above the keys. She glanced around, but the room was empty. Gathering her nerves, she resumed playing, but that's when the piano began to play on its own. The keys pressed down as if invisible hands were plucking out a melody. Terrified, Mrs. Calloway stood up and backed away from the piano. The haunting music continued for several seconds before abruptly stopping, leaving the room in dead silence. She grabbed her things and fled, vowing never to stay late again. It wasn't until weeks later that Mrs. Calloway learned the chilling history of the room. The school, it turned out, had been built on the foundation of a grand mansion from the early 1900s. The mansion's owner had a daughter, Lillian, who had been a gifted pianist. She spent hours playing in what had once been the Grand Music Hall, now the school's music room. Lillian had died young from a sudden illness, and local legend said that her spirit never left, forever tied to the piano she had loved so much. To this day, students and staff report hearing the soft sound of a piano playing, even when the room is empty. Some even claim to have seen a shadowy figure standing by the piano, watching silently as they pass by the door.